Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional connection out in New Zealand with Dr. Jenna Duehr. Jenna, can you get us started by just introducing yourself and reflecting on what it was that attracted you to the chiropractic path?
Yes, certainly. So my name is Jenna, and I am coming all the way from New Zealand. We are at the college. I'm at the college at the moment, the New Zealand College of Chiropractic. This is where I work as a lecturer and a researcher. But I am a graduate from here as well, and that was 2018. I graduated from the New Zealand College of Chiropractic, and yeah, and very soon after that actually started lecturing part-time as well as in practice, and that's because I have a background in nursing as well. So I was a nurse before I was a chiropractor, and I love the teaching side of it. I love teaching the students. I love developing new chiropractors. It's a real passion of mine, and of course I love the profession. So that to see great chiropractors being out there in the community is really important to me. So that's why I did that. And in terms of chiropractic itself, how I got into it was through who's my now husband. He was studying at the college, and I was nursing at the time. And we met, and he was telling me all about this thing called chiropractic, and I didn't know a lot about it at that point. I thought that it was something that you just go to when you've got a sore back, and that was about the limit of what I knew. And then he started telling me all the stuff about actually it's about being well and keeping your body well and optimal health, and that kind of interested me. And I was struggling a little bit with nursing already at that point, feeling a bit frustrated, not feeling like I was helping people to the point that I wanted to. And chiropractic seemed like a really good pathway with that. So yeah, I took the leap and I went back to university and did the chiropractic degree, and loved every second of it. It was definitely the right path for me. And yeah.
As a chiropractic teacher at one of the best chiropractic schools in the world, what have you observed amongst the chiropractic student body? What are some maybe common demographics that you see that they share, or what does that transformation look like? And maybe use a story or use some skill sets that get developed or some confidence that gets developed, and maybe how it happens for chiropractic students to really make that shift from maybe their high school or undergrad, or just entering into a chiropractic program, a new environment, a new demand and set of demands. Maybe you can just kind of give some context of what you've observed within your experiences going to New Zealand Chiropractic College, but also as a teacher observing the changes that you see amongst some of your students.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a little bit of a mix. Sometimes we have maybe like 20 to 30% of the class that have come over from places like Canada that have come here to study, and they've already done a degree, so they're a little bit more experienced. And then we have students that are pretty much brand new. They have done 1 year at a university already. And I think what they have in common is they're all interested in helping people, and they're all interested in health. And they get here, and we're a big family here. Like the college has a real family vibe, and we really look after the students. So in the beginning, the first year, it's probably quite overwhelming. There's a lot to learn. It's a demanding degree, but they flourish. And I think it's amazing to see that transformation from the first year and then them heading into the chiropractic center as interns. There's so much growth and development just in those 2 years. And they learn a lot of confidence in themselves. They learn a lot about how to interact with other people and that kind of interpersonal skills, and their like palpation skills and all of those kind of, actual technical aspects of being a chiropractor develop very quickly. And I think it's amazing to see.
And what specifically are you teaching, and how would you describe the specialized path that you took in becoming a chiropractor? What did you really focus your efforts on? What was unique about your path?
Yeah, I lecture currently in the pathology courses. So that's I do a lot of the basic sciences. So pathology and chiropractic science, because research is my other love. And I found coming to the chiropractic college from nursing was both a hindrance and a help. It was helpful because I had obviously a lot of knowledge already about the body and how it works and health. Well, sickness probably would be a better description. And then I had a lot of difficulties sometimes in crossing those worlds. I came from obviously quite a medical background, and then the chiropractic that we teach here is very much about health and wellness. And so sometimes that paradigm shift was challenging for me, but also loved that shift. So it was a huge growth for me during that time. And so I really enjoy teaching pathology. I really enjoy having the students even though it's a course about disease processes, I really enjoy having them learn that through a lens of, what's the body actually trying to do here, and how the body is intelligent. And that's what I really strive to do. And I love it, and I think they like it.
Hey, can you maybe just bring a little bit of that energy into this conversation of providing an understanding that chiropractic students have to study a certain amount of basic science courses, have to go through some really deep pathology courses, but how to shift the way that they're learning these courses to get more out of it regardless of what school they go to? If you could maybe just help them see that there is another way to consume this information and make it useful for themselves, or more useful.
Yes. Yeah. Something that I always say at the beginning of the first pathology course with the year ones is that, you're coming into a profession that, yes, is about health and wellness, but you are dealing with a population who generally, I think we can all agree there's a lot of illness out there, and that is increasing. And so not everyone that's coming into you is going to be this, picture perfect health. And we really do need to understand what is happening and what's not normal and what is normal. And to be a good practitioner, to be a good chiropractor, you do need to understand, a lot about pathology and anatomy and neurology to actually do your job right. I think it is our responsibility as a chiropractor, as a primary healthcare practitioner, to understand these things, to look after our people the best that we can. And if you can and flip that lens so that it is, instead of getting bogged down to this like boring, diseases and that kind of stuff, thinking more about how, well, actually, what is the body doing in this time? Because it's always intelligent, it's always striving towards health. And sometimes it just gets, stuck and struggles with its limitations of matter. And I think that's a really important way to look at it.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And you said that research was your other passion or your other love. Can you kind of just unpack the culture at New Zealand? Obviously, you've got the research team being world recognized as one of the best, if not the best, research team in the profession of chiropractic. Can you talk about that culture, that team, how dynamic it is, how it works, how you've gotten involved with it, or just like what maybe some of the things that are most exciting for you these days as far as your awareness of what they're up to?
Yeah. I was fortunate to start working in the research department as a student because of my nursing background. And one of the studies that they were doing, they just required a healthcare professional. And I just fell in love with the big idea, really, that we are so blessed to have here at this college is this, the Heidi Horvick and Dr. Kelly Holt, who's now our president, leading this research team with this huge, sorry, my computer just went to sleep, with this huge passion and drive to bring the profession forward and to educate everybody about the science of chiropractic. And we do incredible research here. It's so very privileged to be a part of it and to continue working here. The research department is growing rapidly. We have a lot of biomedical engineers that work with us now. And that's because the type of research we do is very neurophysiological based. And we do need to have experts that understand how to collect that data properly, how to analyze that data. And we're very fortunate to have the likes of Imran Khan Niazi, who's one of the best in the world with AI and how to use that to analyze EEG data, for example. So we're doing some pretty cool stuff. And I'm just beginning my PhD, and my big love is actually pediatric chiropractic research. That's something that I'm really passionate about increasing, because I think we don't have enough of that. We don't understand it enough. And the reason why research is so important to me, my drive, is that the more we understand, the more we can demonstrate the changes and explain that to other healthcare professionals, the more access people will have to chiropractic. And, my vision is that every baby that is born is checked. And we need to, unfortunately, in this society, have some evidence to back that up. Yeah.
If we were to put you on the spot as and let's just say you're speaking to other healthcare providers, how would you maybe give 5 different pieces of chiropractic research that you find to be very valuable in explaining the value of what it is that we do to influence the central nervous system, or influence sensory motor integration, or influence joint position sense, or influence reaction time? Anything that comes to mind that you can continue kind of speaking at high level more to a college educated individual about, that will help them better understand us?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the big body of work that we have done, we have multiple research studies that demonstrate we do an adjustment, a high velocity, low amplitude thrust to the spine, activates the receptors in the paraspinal muscles and changes the sensory input to the brain. And it is the brain where the changes are happening. And that ultimately leads to the brain being able to properly control what is happening in the body. And a lot of that we're seeing is control of the spine and also control of the muscles. So we've done a number of studies that have looked at increased muscle strength. One of the most exciting one is a recent clinical trial that we did with stroke, people that have had a stroke, and that when you give them chiropractic care on top of their normal physiotherapy, that their functional outcomes are much improved. And that's really exciting, I think, when we're looking at rehabilitation aspects. And then in terms of EEG data, we have quite considerable data now that we're building, that we can very clearly see when you adjust someone, the brain changes. And we've got controls to say when we do a control thrust, we don't get those changes in the brain. And this is large quantities of data that have been analyzed using AI. And we know that the brain changes when we adjust someone.
What specific ways or pathways are influenced by the adjustment? How does the brain change? And if you were to describe what the process has been like in starting your PhD program, and why specifically you're interested in studying and identifying what research gaps we have within the pediatric population.
Yes. Yeah. So in terms of the pathways, one of the big studies that we looked at was, so we had a number of studies that were telling us we're changing sensory motor integration. So we're changing how well the brain is able to take in sensory information, process that, and create a motor output. But we weren't sure exactly where in the brain this was happening. And so the study that we did used 64-channel EEG, so very, very in-depth analysis of the brain, and it was the prefrontal cortex. And that's an exciting part of the brain because it's really the most like one of the very high level processing centers in the brain, and it coordinates, many different functions. We've got autonomic nervous system function, we've got pain perception, the immune system. Like, it's kind of like the conductor of the brain. And so when we saw that, we got really excited. And so the research that we're doing, or we're trying to get underway at the moment, is actually taking that basic science knowledge. So we know we change the brain, but what does that actually mean for the person? So we're starting to do those kind of clinical trial functional outcomes now. And we're excited to see where that goes. In terms of my PhD, that's a great question. It's been very challenging, to be honest. Here at the college, we don't have a postgraduate pathway yet. One day maybe, but at the moment we have to do master's and PhD at another university. And that comes with challenges because they don't have chiropractors or chiropractic researchers there on faculty that can have that expertise to supervise. And then for me, I added in babies, and that was a whole nother level of like who actually could supervise me and have the knowledge to supervise a PhD. So it's taken me, I've had a baby in between, so I did pause for a little while, but it's taken a good year and a half just to nail down my project and find a supervisor that had enough knowledge to take that on. But I have, so we're there. But yes, it is something that's challenging with chiropractic research. Is it's not so well known. There's not enough expertise out there in other universities. But the more we do that, the more people like me, and we've got other PhDs that are in those universities, the more that will change. And that's exciting. We can see that in the future, more PhDs.
Yeah, and can you kind of just off of that statement, like, can you kind of just build a framework of understanding for what it means to become a PhD? What's the process like? What is so challenging about finding the right person to supervise you, coming up with a thesis that you'll then have to defend? I'm just speaking from basics of that I really truly don't have a depth of understanding of, but I would love for you to maybe just paint a picture for chiropractic students and prospective students that are interested in this pathway. Maybe talk about like the mechanics of what it means to go and become a PhD candidate, but also talk about like why that's important and what types of students might be like well positioned, or the best types of students to maybe be pre-qualified for this pathway.
Yes. So it kind of depends on the university that they come from and what degree they come out with. I know that some university programs will have, they come out with like a master's, which can maybe have an accelerated pathway towards a PhD. But you do have to have research experience. And here in New Zealand, to do a PhD, you have to either have gotten honours in a postgraduate or a master's. So you have to get a first class honours to be eligible to get into a PhD. So I did my master's. I was fortunate that I'd had the nursing degree and I'd done postgraduate work already. So I was actually able to do my master's at the same time as my chiropractic degree. So I came out of chiropractic college with a master's, a research master's, and the chiropractic degree. So I could go into the PhD pretty soon after. And the time really has just been figuring out the project. And that's probably the hardest part, is you have to design and justify in detail your project before you even start the PhD. So before you're even enrolled, you actually have to do a whole, a year's work really of literature searching and really defining the research project that you want to do. And so I've done that. backwards, and then you go backwards and forwards a lot with supervisors, because you might find one that has, like my supervisor has a lot of knowledge with motor control and with infant development. And so I was able to find him, but he's like the third person I've talked to. And then unfortunately, when you start discussing chiropractic, people just don't understand that. And they don't understand why you would adjust a baby. That's a big thing. So you then have to go into all of the explanation and giving them a whole lot of research, a whole lot of safety research as well, because of course that's their concern. And the supervisors, when they are agreeing to work with you, they want to know that you're going to be successful, really, because nobody wants to go for 3 years, which is a PhD, 3 or 4, and then not be successful at the end. It's also bad for the supervisor, because this is their body of work as well. And it's obviously bad for the student that's done 3 years of work. So you really have to kind of get this topic, this research project, pretty well defined before you start. So there's a lot of build up. In terms of the students, I would say that those that have found going through their chiropractic program that they have an interest in research. You do have to be on the upper end of your academic performance. But if they find that they have an interest, a passion for research, then go down that road, because it is so important that we have more chiropractic research, in my opinion.
In effort to try and give like a micro project, a small, maybe 3-month project, maybe 6-month project, to somebody that helps them see whether or not they really enjoy research, can you maybe creatively craft a project that would help be robust enough that it challenged students to really conduct themselves in a way that's similar to the way a researcher would conduct themselves? Maybe it's obviously not going to be doing research, but maybe it's being involved on a research team. Maybe it's doing independent research through a number of different journals. I'm just coming up with ideas, but I would love, from your vantage point, if you could help us craft some sort of project that can do that for the student.
I think the best way is to connect with the research department at the college that you are at, or the university that you're at, and become a research assistant. So when you are at that like level, undergrad kind of a level, it's, unless you're doing a master's or a PhD, or you're already a postdoc, to craft a research study and to undertake one is not really possible. You have to have researchers that doing that, because in ethics, you have to go through ethics application, and they do look at those things like your research experience. So you do need to work in with researchers, but by all means, go into the research department. We usually need people to help. And something that they could do is be part of conducting the literature review, for example. And I think that's a skill in itself, is actually reading research and getting good at academic writing and getting good at being able to critique a research study and understanding that. In terms of like an actual research study that they can do, there's a lot to it. So you've got to design that so that you can get an ethics approval. Then you would have to make, like, it's really good to have a control group. So participant numbers are a thorn in everyone's side that's a researcher, because trying to find enough people to be part of your study can be quite challenging. But to do like a base, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
To do like a basic science study where you're looking at the mechanisms. For example, you adjust someone and you want to see whether that changes how well they can position their ankle, for example, on a force plate, something like that. So you do need like kind of high-tech equipment to do this stuff properly, which is why you need a research department. But to do that, a basic science one, you need less participant numbers, so you could probably get away with something like 20 in each group.
Just to clarify, because I think you might be misinterpreting, I meant that in college sometimes you have to do like a research paper where you draw together maybe 5 different resources or references, and I was just wondering if you can give a more, due to the specialized knowledge that you contain up here, if you could maybe like provide a level of specific language that I can't, to how students can spend 3 to 6 months on an independent study project where maybe they pick a topic, and how you would advise them to go about developing this project on their own, utilizing resources that are available on the internet, or in their library, or within the faculty at the school that they're enrolled.
Yeah. So looking at like what types of research papers they want to be looking into. Yeah. I mean, we want to do lots of brain-based research. So looking at how we change the nervous system, so the central nervous system. So when you're doing a literature search, like you're going to be wanting to search those topics. So you'll find that a lot of the literature uses terminology such as spinal manipulation rather than adjustment. And that's just the journal itself, their requirements. So you could search for things like spinal manipulation. You want to look up sensory motor integration is a really good one. We know that that's a big part of a chiropractic adjustment. You want to be looking at, the brain, central nervous system, using those kind of key terminology so that you can identify the type of research studies that are out there, and then coming up with something along those veins that you could, you would need resources. People that understand neurophysiology is a really big one. And you would need things like EMG or EEG to do that kind of research. So a research department that has that stuff. I don't know if I'm answering your question adequately.
Well, maybe I'm not phrasing it well, but I guess I'm just trying to have somebody like you give a research project prompt to a student and say, hey, go and find some such and such and connect the dots between this and this and this and this to make a case or make a point or craft an argument or whatever. Maybe research is it has so much meaning to you that and it has a different meaning to me, that it's difficult for you to fully articulate it in a way that kind of simplifies it and maybe even waters it down. But really, I'm just trying to get students to explore concepts relevant to chiropractic studies as pre-chiropractic students before they even get to chiropractic school, so that they may show up in chiropractic school having some sort of primer experience of what it's like to do research in the context of chiropractic, but more or less just doing reviews of different existing literature.
Yeah. So, okay. If you were going to be looking like topics, neuroplasticity, something that when we do our chiropractic science, like our first research paper, neuroplasticity is such a key, like core component of understanding everything to do with chiropractic and the mechanism of it. So for them to go through literature that talks about how the brain changes and adapts based on its environment, that's gold for understanding chiropractic. And for a pre-chiropractic student, we always recommend they read Heidi's book, The Reality Check, because it's such a easy to understand book, but still discussing the science. So if they had read something like that and then actually go through looking at some of the resources that she identifies and reading those research studies, I mean, they'd just be in such a good place coming into chiropractic school like that. Something, a field that I think we want to start looking into more depth is the autonomic nervous system. So getting them to, having students starting to look at changes in heart rate variability, for example, changes in the vagus nerve, that side of it is really good as well to look into.
I really appreciate you just sharing with the students that are interested in these topics. And I really think every student just who are involved in academics and graduate school are going to want to be challenged. Everybody wants to be challenged. And so thank you for kind of just helping plant some seeds on like what's possible, some different subject matters that people can go deeper on their own terms, on their own time. Is there any final message that you want to just share with with me about pre-chiropractic and how it could potentially be a difference maker in extending the runway for students looking to become chiropractors, starting earlier in their academic years, thinking about chiropractic concepts, starting to study sooner, maybe even having a pre-chiropractic club? I don't know if you have any ideas about what that could mean on the different campuses around New Zealand to have pre-chiropractic clubs functioning to just establish a presence of chiropractic and help differentiate it in the minds of other students that are going to that school and studying to become nurses or medical doctors or whoever.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea, having groups of students getting together that are pre-chiropractic students, because it is different. We think differently, really. It's just the way that it is. And I think there's a really unique focus on the body working at its best. And when, and I'm a nurse, so I'm not at all being negative towards that side of it, but it's a different way of thinking. They compartmentalize the body. It's more looking at what's going wrong. Where a student that's interested in chiropractic, we're going to be looking at how the body can function better and improving the nervous system. Fall in love with the nervous system, fall in love with the brain. The more that you can delve into how incredible the brain is and how it has the biggest impact on our body and how our body works, the more you will love your studies, because you can just like put that filter on everything. If you're changing how someone's brain functions, you can literally change pretty much everything in their life. And that's exciting.